All right, so we're going to be analyzing AUD.USD in this analysis. Let's pull it out to the monthly time frame. Let's do this with me, okay? Horizontal upper, mid, and lower monthly zone by looking for horizontal buy and sell sensitivity. Time to talk about flow. Sellers had strong control to our monthly lower zone. Buyers entered the market as expected. We had a push. What's after a push to the downside? An exhaustion to the upside with the continuational push to retest our monthly lower zone. Down to the weekly time frame, we identified our weekly mid-range zone. We identified higher lows, so we can identify another area of sensitivity, which is this uptrend. So what's next? We have to talk about flow. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Remember that monthly push to the downside? Here's that monthly exhaustion and that monthly continuational push to the downside. The main thing I notice on the weekly time frame is how strong sellers have control. Okay, this is definitely a seller's market on the higher time frame. Why? After we see two injections of sell pressure hit the market at our monthly mid-range zone, this is double confirmation. We see sell pressure enter the market and we see a strong push to the downside. But what are we missing here? What is the main reason why we know that this is a strong seller's market? Because we do not see an exhaustion. Okay, so we know that after a push, there's usually an exhaustion. Okay, so here we see a push to the downside, but we do not see a sufficient enough exhaustion after this break of our weekly mid-range zone and the uptrend to the upside. After this push, there should have been an exhaustion and a continuational push to the downside, but we do not see a sufficient weekly exhaustion, telling me that there's just continuous sell pressure pushing price to retest the monthly lower zone. Now, although we know that there's a lot of sell pressure going to our monthly lower zone, what else do we know? We know that there's a lot of buy pressure at our monthly lower zone. So we have this situation now where sellers are now starting to meet buyers. There was no exhaustion, a lot of sell pressure confirmation. So what do we need to do? We need to take it down again to the daily for a closer look. Okay, we've taken it down to the daily. We identified a daily downtrend by looking for lower highs. So let's talk flow. What do we know? We know that price made a strong push to our monthly lower zone without completing an exhaustion. We know that there's continuous sell pressure confirmed by our daily downtrend. Every time price comes in contact with this downtrend, we see a new injection of sell pressure entering the market, continuing to push price to our lower monthly zone, again confirming continuous sell pressure. All right, let's simplify everything before we talk about entry, because that's how entry will make sense. All right, so we know that this is a bear market. Okay, we know that for a number of reasons. We just talked about it. We know that bears want to give this lower monthly zone a push to the downside. Okay, I do not see much buy sensitivity other than the first contact of this monthly lower zone. After the first initial wave of buy sensitivity, bears have continued to squeeze price to the downside. So when we take it to the daily time frame, it's very clear to me that we're still going to see sell pressure to retest this monthly zone to the downside, meaning that we're only looking for entry short, and because we are on the higher time frame, there might be room to capitalize and take some pips. So let's take it down to the 4H for a closer look. All right, down to the 4-hour time frame, time to talk about entry. But what are we looking at here? Well, here is that daily downtrend we're talking about. We know that there's sell pressure off this downtrend. Here's our 4H mid-range zone we were able to identify when we zoom out. So what do we see here? Just like we see on the higher time frame, we see a push without an exhaustion. This is fine because it gives us a proper entry to the downside. So this is a push breaking an area of sensitivity to the downside. We know that sellers are likely exhausted on the lower time frame. So after a push to the downside, there's likely an exhaustion to the upside, where then we wait for price action confirmation before placing an entry short. So in summary, one more time, price broke this 4H mid-range zone to the downside. That's a push. We wait for exhaustion to retest area sensitivity, being the 4H mid-range zone, and price action confirmation being a bearish engulfing candle before entry to the downside. Now, what would make this trade invalid? Very simple. If price fails to come back for exhaustion and continues to the downside, this trade becomes invalid because risk reward is no longer optimal. That's it for AUD.USD.